Hello and welcome back to this third series of 14 Bannerman Road. Before we start, a tiny bit of housekeeping. It's been a while since I've recorded one of these, so if they reference something that I don't pick up on, then you can blame that on my memory, though I will be looking at wikis to see if there's any juicy information there. And if you want to watch these episodes now, they're available on BritBox, which I take full credit for, so you're welcome. Anyway, take it away, Clyde.
13 Bannerman Road is where Sarah Jane Smith lives, and it's home to things way beyond your imagination.
He said the thing! Yes, 13 Bannerman Road is where Sarah Jane Smith lives officially. They've locked it in now, and this episode is the first one to actually use that intro. The episode in question is Prisoner of the Judoon, and of course we'll be covering parts 1 and 2, both written by Phil Ford and directed by Joss Agnew, with part 1 first broadcast on the 15th of October 2009, and part 2 first broadcast on the 16th of October 2009. And this is a trend that will carry on throughout the rest of the show now, rather than waiting a week between them. The parts of the episode will now be broadcast on successive days in the same week. As a final point, I seem to recall wanting Rani to have a bit more focus this series, so that's what I'll be looking out for in this episode. And with that out of the way, let's begin. So we kick off with that intro rather than the cold open. It shows a lot of clips of what's to come while setting up the premise if you've missed series 1 and 2. The full intro that Clyde sort of breaks the fourth wall to say directly to you is 13 Bannerman Road is where Sarah Jane Smith lives, and it's home to things way beyond your imagination. There's an extraterrestrial supercomputer in the wall, a genetically engineered boy genius in the attic, and a schoolgirl investigator across the road, and a whole universe of adventure right here on the doorstep. And then Sarah Jane turns to him and says, "Ready?" And then he turns and basically looks directly into the camera and says, "Always." And then the theme music plays. It's interesting that Clyde is the one that's telling you about it, so he doesn't give himself a catchy tagline, though it's somewhat trickier to think of what his one might be. So I think they've picked the right guy to sort of tell you the intro rather than having anyone else going, "Oh yeah, and there's Clyde. He makes jokes, I guess." We love him though. So after all the theme music and everything, the episode starts proper in space, sort of flying through nebulae and asteroid fields as Sarah Jane monologues about how she used to travel the stars meeting creatures. They really want to get you up to speed on everything. And we sort of fly up to Earth, and then the Earth transitions nicely into her eyeball. All the planets and things look a bit too smooth and a bit too CGI. You know how things can look. But that's kind of exactly what I expect. It doesn't really look that bad. And so the whole gang is here, sort of outside Bannerman Road. They're going to stay behind at Bannerman Road while Sarah Jane goes off to work on a weekend. So we've established that it's a weekend. So she drives off to some big businessy looking building, and they do the classic thing of take a normal building and then enhance it by having something big and CGI on top. In this case, it's a big bronze spinning globe. I think they did that for previous buildings. I remember one, and it had like a big CGI dish on it. And I think they did something with the school where they put like a new block on the school. It's sort of a classic of what they do, rather than making a whole building themselves. Inside the building is an American guy, and he's talking about the nanobots that they make there. And Sarah Jane looks into a microscope and sees these smooth, silvery kind of beetle-looking things at 4,420 times magnification. And he assures her that nanoforms out of control, eating up all matter. It's hogwash, Miss Smith. So I sure believe him. I don't think that these nanobots are going to be used for any nefarious purposes in the coming story. They're going to be perfectly fine. So Sarah Jane does her investigative reporting, and she asks if he's been exaggerating claims about them fixing tires and repairing hearts and building new worlds to secure investors, and that the investors aren't actually going to see any returns for 100 years. And then she probably gets thrown out of the building, which we see is called Genetic Systems, the company that's in that building, which is interesting because the nanobots seem like tiny robots rather than beings with DNA, so I'm not really sure how genetics plays into it. It's just sort of, they've just picked a science word and gone with it. So she heads home, and she sees something flying through the atmosphere, quite reminiscent of when that big asteroid was going to come and crash into Earth, and then Mr. Smith just diverted it at the last minute. It's that sort of just big fiery cloud thing streaking across the sky. She's not sure if it's a comet or a spaceship or what. Clyde hopes that it's cool, and then Luke makes the joke that it'd be very hot actually, and Clyde is unimpressed with his humour, but I appreciate a stupid pun like that. We get a Mr. Smith, I Need You, of course. The same fanfare as always, but it seems a little tad shorter. It doesn't, they've just cut it off now. But still, will open up on all the gas firing out, and very grandiose. And he says that this thing entered the solar system 45 minutes ago. So Sarah Jane says that's moving way too fast to be a meteor if it's crossed the solar system in 45 minutes. The note I've written is a hype, alien hype, because they're all going, well, it's going to be an alien, and of course Mrs. Smith has detected that the thing has engines. He's intercepted a distress signal, and they play the distress signal, and we see that it's a Judoon. The episode is of course called Prisoner of the Judoon. For those who don't know, Judoon, they're very heavy-handed space police. They look like bipedal rhinos, and they were first introduced in a Doctor Who episode in 2007. I remember it was Martha's first episode. It had the 10th Doctor, and the hospital got transferred to the moon, and then they had the Judoon platoon on the moon thing. So they're very obviously repurposing some costumes from that episode, like how they did with the Slovene. I imagine Sarah Jane is about to give us some background on the Judoon anyway, and of course she does. She says that they're police, and Luke goes, okay, so they're good guys, and Sarah Jane's like, well, no, not quite. Mrs. Smith relates that Unit have found the ship that crashed. They're dealing with it, but they're unaware that before it crashed, it ejected out a life pod, so the gang can go and find that one. Which is a neat way to sort of bring up Unit and say, hey, look, Unit are doing something, but also still get them out of the story. It's also a neat way to not have to build a whole ship and just have to build a little set for a skateboard. And in fact, I don't think they even do that. So, yeah, as far as I'm aware, we don't really see... The Judoon crashing on the distress signal is quite reminiscent of when Karg was crashing. So they might have repurposed his ship for that bit, actually. That's a question. Anyway, Sarah Jane says that if they told Unit about the life pod, then they'd start asking questions about how she found out about it, and then she might have to explain about Mr. Smith, and she'd rather keep Mr. Smith under wraps. So, it's better that they don't tell Unit about it and they go and deal with it themselves. Also, Unit carry guns, Judoon carry guns. Try and keep them away from each other and mitigate a shootout as best we can. Before they can leave, Geeta comes over the road. She says Sarah. Under her breath, Sarah goes, "It's Sarah Jane," which is like a neat little moment. And Geeta says that she wants to know if Sarah Jane has any contacts for expanding her flower shop. So essentially, to get her out of the way and shut her up, Sarah Jane gives her the details for genetic systems and says that they could do with a little flower power. The life pod has crashed in an abandoned council estate, so we see a big building with a big CGI hole in it. Of course, the classic thing of take a real building, enhance it with CGI, or VFX, I think, actually. I think CGI is like Toy Story, where the entire thing is computer generated, and VFX is where they've enhanced something with computer generation, so this is all VFX. I'm not sure if there's a little bit of fire. It must be VFX fire as well, because the hole's not real. But yeah, they've made it look like something has come smashing through this building. Thank God it landed there when it was all abandoned, eh? And nobody else knows about it, apparently. Nobody else heard the crash? Nobody else saw the crash? I understand that it's abandoned, but surely somebody else looked up at the sky and saw and figured out where it was going. But no, it's just our little gang of four. Suddenly, blaster bolts are being fired at them. I'm not sure what the Judoons call their guns, so I'm just going to call it a blaster. It puts a sort of picture in your mind, doesn't it, of something possibly red going pachoo, and then there's like a spark as it hits a wall. That's exactly what's happening. So they all run for cover, and we see a big angry rhino in leather skirts stomping about, and they look great. I love the design. I love how detailed that rhino head is. It looks weird and alien and brilliant, and it's obviously it's not a thing that's been made for Sarah Jane Adventures. It's a thing that's been made for Doctor Who. But like they did a great job when they made him for Doctor Who. It turns out that he isn't firing at them. They see some other bipedal figure that is sprinting by. Can't really get much of a glimpse of it. It looks like it's in kind of like a tatty white thing, and it's gone. So Sarah Jane figures out, well, the Judoon are policemen, so it's likely a prison carrier that's crashed, and then the prisoners escaped, so the Judoon's trying to come and hunt it back down. And they best get after them, because the Judoon probably isn't going to care about whatever primitive Earthlings that it has to go through in order to get its prisoner back. Because Earth is just considered, not really of any consequence. They can just stomp on it all they like. We're too primitive to have any effect on anything else in the universe. Geeta is now read up on genetic systems, and she's all hyped up for this. She's gathering all her flowers and getting her van and saying, Haresh, come with me, I'll explain on the way, but we're heading there. So we get a little cut to them. Cut back to Judoon stomping around, scanning for the prisoner. The prisoner comes up behind it and whacks it with what looks like a big kind of steel I-beam or something. Knocks the Judoon out, just cold on the floor. And we see now there's kind of reptilian looking. This prisoner is an alien that is unique to the show. Looks amazing, right? With the skin like texture and the sharp teeth it's got going on, and the little bumps and pointy horns and like the shape of its head. Truly excellent. I don't know who makes these, but it is another triumph. It's sort of in line with the Trickster for like weird and great looking. Kudlak also look great. It's just, I love them. Because I can't remember the last Doctor Who story to actually have just like a big prosthetic actual alien. And so to go back to this era when they were just churning them out, and it's like I'm having the time of my life. I love aliens. So the prisoner manages to rip out of his straitjacket that he's wearing. He's got a kind of like leather getup on, like almost it looks a bit like a biker. And it's got like small holes on like down the spine and on the shoulders for more horns to pop out. Before he can kill the Judoon, it's implied that he's going to kill the Judoon. He hears Sarah Jane, and so he runs off and leaves the Judoon unconscious. And it appears bleeding yellow blood. And I start to wonder, ooh, is this are there rules in place about red blood being too violent, but sort of yellow alien goo being okay? Because I remember, I think about the Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. They had to change blood to green or something, and then it was allowed. I wonder if that sort of rule is in place here, or if this is just a way of going, hey, look, it's an alien. If you weren't convinced by the giant rhino head, it bleeds yellow. This fellow's an alien. Anyway, Sarah Jane takes the Judoon's gun, chucks it away. He comes to, wakes up, scans her, and then puts the scanner to a port in his chest. And goes, language assimilated, Earth, English, you will be catalogued. It's more gravelly. I can't attempt to replicate the voice. I think it's Nicholas Briggs doing the voice. And Nicholas Briggs is famous for doing the voice of Daleks, and I think some Cybermen as well. I love that they have their own language, and then they go around and they assimilate others to universally communicate. I just think that's a cool alien sci-fi touch. It's what they did in Doctor Who, anyway, so it's not unique to the show. These sort of weird scanners, they go around and they catalogue people, and they can scan everything. It's sort of like an Omnitor type thing. But yeah, I just love it very much. I also love, now it's speaking English, the way its lips move. That's great. They must have some way of puppeteering them inside, or if they're on a motor or something. I don't know, but they look great. Just I can't sing the praises of these alien designs enough. So the Judoon says that by taking his gun, they've impeded his duties and assisted the prisoner. So Ronnie says, hey, we only took it because you were using it recklessly and you almost shot us. And he says that the sentence is execution. He's about to execute them, and then collapses against the wall. So they say that he's in no shape to execute anyone. Look, we just want to help you. We don't particularly want whatever prisoner this is running around causing havoc on Earth. Thank you very much. So we'd like to help you if you don't kill us, please. And he says, okay, my prisoner is a destroyer of worlds. So that's good to know, isn't it? That's Earth is going to be destroyed if we let him continue running around. We probably should try and lock him up, actually, yeah. We see the prisoner sneaking about. He spies a girl on a space hopper, and then a long sort of forked VFX tongue snakes out of his mouth. I love, again, the mix of practical effects with all his design and then a little bit of VFX to do with the tongue. It's quite obvious to see the difference between them. But I think it would look a lot worse if he had an entirely VFX face, because spoilers, he's not going to look like himself for the majority of this episode. We'll get to that. But if they took the little bits where he was him and made him an entirely VFX face, I think that'd be weird. So I like the little VFX tongue that sort of just enhances it. Ronnie offers Judoon something to mop up the blood with, and then when he's mopped it up, he chucks it back at her. And I thought, oh, maybe his blood is going to come into play. And now she's just got like a thing with Judoon blood on it in her pocket. It doesn't come up again. I thought it might, but it doesn't. But he reveals that he is Captain Tybo of the 1005th Judoon Guard. And his prisoner is Androvax the Annihilator, who is wanted for 12 counts of global destruction. He has destroyed 12 planets, and now he's loose on Earth. So that's great. They hear somebody scream, and so Sarah Jane says, Luke, Ronnie, stay here with Tybo. Clyde, come with me. Let's go find out what's happening. And Clyde picks up the gun, actually, and then Sarah Jane says, leave it. And it reminds me a little bit of when Ryan from Doctor Who, from the recent series of Doctor Who, was running around going pew pew with that gun, and then like something shot at him and he ran away screaming. Sarah Jane and Clyde find the little girl from the space hopper, who says that a monster took her mummy. She's being a little bit creepy about it, so I'm slightly suspicious. Like, she's standing in the middle of a hall, facing away from them. The camera sort of goes a bit, like there's something wrong with her. But then she just turns around and she appears to be a scared little girl. So Sarah Jane and Clyde, they phone up Luke. They say, keep Tybo out of the way, because Androvax is going around stealing people. We need to deal with this. We can't have him walking in shooting people. Keep him out of the way, please. So they go, hey, you want to go back to the crash site? We think we've got some news. Androvax might be there. Tybo, yeah, come with us back to the crash site, and just don't go near that hall. Just stay away from that hall, please. Clyde looks around the hall, can't find Androvax, can't find the girl's mum. Wonder what he'd even want with a human anyway. The girl's doing normal I'm a scared little girl stuff. Going, oh, the monster, it looks horrible. Sarah Jane is, bless her, trying to teach her not to discriminate against aliens. And going, well, look, we probably look quite horrible to it, actually. It's just lost here on Earth. Just wants to go back. Probably just, and Clyde goes, yeah, it probably just wants your mum to help it phone home. It's like, all right, Clyde, you've met enough aliens now, and that's your reference for him. But Sarah Jane's scanner watch then goes off and reveals that the little girl is in fact an alien. Oh no. And I wish we hadn't got the scene of Androvax eyeing her up beforehand, because I think this reveal would have hit harder then. They've done that before, actually. They've given a bit too much away, but I can't remember when. But my money is on this also being a Phil Ford episode. This one is written by Phil Ford, and the last time they gave something away, I think it was Kodak. I can't remember who wrote the Kodak ones, but yeah, they just tend to give a little bit too much away, and I don't think we needed it. So Androvax kind of blobs his way out. That's what I've written in my notes. He blobs his way out of the girl, who's left unconscious, standing up. Is it just kind of like she distorts a bit and he steps out of her body? It's very weird. He reaches out for Sarah Jane's forehead. She goes unconscious, standing up too, and he threatens Clyde to stay where he is. His voice is kind of like a bored villain. He's just sort of like, yes, I'm Androvax the Annihilator. And then he steps into Sarah Jane's body and possesses her like he did with the girl. I have 1 second to wonder why he didn't make Clyde unconscious, when, in Sarah Jane's body, he immediately makes Clyde unconscious. The tongue then snakes out of Sarah Jane's mouth, and now I appreciate it as a touch more to go, hey, look, she's possessed. I mean, we'll see later on that her acting, you can definitely tell she's possessed, but I like the little tongue that snakes out. In case anybody was wondering, she's wearing a bright red shirt on under her waistcoat and is looking very fetching. The Judoon, after being unable to find Androvax at the crash site, which we don't really see, accuses Luke of lying. Luke says, hey, it was a mistake. It wasn't a lie. It was a lie, but it was a mistake. Okay, you don't need to know it was a lie. It was a mistake. And that's not a crime. You know, I messed up, but everybody messes up. And the Judoon, Captain Tybo, then takes Luke's phone and Rani's phone and crushes them under his foot and says that they won't be able to make any more mistakes now with him. Sarah Jane is driven back to 13 Bannerman Road, and Elizabeth Sladen is giving her best "I'm possessed by a villainous alien" expression, just all in her face. She's really... She's not Sarah Jane anymore, she is Androvax, and she's having the time of her life with it. Tybo, Luke and Rani find the hall where Androvax and co previously were. It appears empty, can't find Clyde, can't find the girl, can't find the girl's mum. But Tybo scans around and finds transbody fusion energy, which is, of course, from when Androvax has taken over different bodies, and manages to locate Clyde, who has been placed just behind a load of guff on the stage. There's a scene of Tybo just throwing things behind him and they all go flying by. Clyde is, of course, sort of unconscious, standing up in this trance state, which Rani says is similar to when Geeta was possessed, or well, not really possessed, but just sort of put into that state by Mrs. Wormwood. So we get a nice little callback to that. Tybo just finds a spray bottle of water somewhere and just squirts Clyde's face with it, and that manages to wake him up. Luke appears quite angry with Tybo for not believing that the fact that Androvax can possess his mum was relevant information. It's like, oh, okay, he's a veil form, he can switch bodies. And he just goes, information was not relevant. And then, yeah, Luke really gets quite angry. And I like seeing Luke a little bit angry. It's just because he's been quite meek and, you know, stuff before, and actually sort of coming in and having this, standing up for himself a bit is quite nice to see. The girl and her mum, actually also there on the stage, they appear to be coming round now, so everybody just scarpers to avoid having to explain anything to them. And I wonder how much of this they will remember, because I'm not sure if Clyde really remembers anything from being in the trance state. It was just as if he was asleep. But he certainly remembers what he saw beforehand. So the little girl has seen Androvax, but just a little girl saw Androvax. We'll leave her... Well, she'll probably need to have some therapy at some point, but we'll just leave them to it and never come back to that. We have a scene of Androvax as Sarah Jane wandering around the attic that ends on a sort of, "Mr. Smith, I need you." And I 100%, I need to make this supercut of every time that anybody says, "Mr. Smith, I need you." I'm never going to do it, but like I need to do it. I might do it. I think I need to start doing it now. We see, you know, the gang are just sort of out and about. Obviously, Sarah Jane's taken the car. Androvax says Sarah Jane has taken the car, so they can't get back anywhere, so they're just sort of walking along. And the police drive past, and Tybo points his gun at them, and then, you know, they pull up and stop. And he hands them a space requisition slip, and then just commandeers the police car. And it's quite funny to see the Judoon as a space police in a human police car. But the police just run off to avoid getting shot, and presumably they'll hand in this slip at the police station, and news will get back to Unit, and Unit will come and wipe their minds, I guess. But they all pile into the police car, and Tybo manages to rip the handbrake out of it, and is obviously an awful driver while claiming that he's a trained pilot, which is quite funny. In the attic, Mr. Smith detects an alien presence, and I think, okay, let's see how useful he really is, because he should put Sarah Jane in a containment vortex right now. We know he's capable of doing that, like he did with Mrs. Wormwood. Mr. Smith, it turns out he's very aware that Sarah Jane is possessed, but Androvax, as Sarah Jane, tells him to ignore his scanners and basically says, you know, if you do anything I don't like, I'm going to smash you up. But, you know, Mr. Smith, there's no fooling him, because even if he does ignore the scanners, Androvax is asking questions and just trying to confirm knowledge that he's trying to peel out of Sarah Jane's mind, that Sarah Jane wouldn't need confirming because she already knows it. Androvax says, hey, like, I've figured out that your purpose is to obey Sarah Jane, so you must. it seems obviously that his programming doesn't make a case for the fact that he's not actually obeying Sarah Jane, he's obeying possession, he's obeying Androvax. But no, apparently, if it looks like Sarah Jane, if it quacks broadly like Sarah Jane, it's a Sarah Jane, and he must obey, even though he does it unwillingly. We cut back to Tybo refusing to break the speed limit, while Clyde trying to convince him that it's okay if he puts the siren on. And then they get to a junction, and someone pulls up next to them, blasting very loud music, and Tybo just rolls down the window, turns, points the gun at him, and threatens him to turn it down to permitted levels, and then goes, "Have nice day." And then when they drive off, the guy immediately gets his phone out and phones his mum. It's just, we just get some comedy with the Judoon, on Earth. It's a little light moment. It's quite funny. By this point, Geeta has pulled up at Genetic Systems with Haresh and a van load of plants. Her plan is essentially to dump them in their office, and then once they realise how nice it looks, they'll hire her, apparently, or something. Haresh is very apprehensive about this. He says, "Hey, we're going to get arrested. I'm going to lose my job." And Geeta says, "Hey, look, it's guerrilla gardening is all it is." And he says, "No, this is basically fly tipping." But he sort of goes along with it. The gang, which at this point includes Tybo, it's Luke, Ronnie, Clyde, and Tybo. They pull up at 13 Bannerman Road. They see that Sarah Jane's car has already left, but the kids, think it's still worth looking for clues as to where she's gone. When Tybo gets a space phone call and reveals that Judoon backup are coming, and we know from earlier that essentially they've got 45 minutes until they arrive. Geeta and Haresh get caught by a security guy at Genetic Systems, and he takes them into another room, just in time for them to miss Androvax's Sarah Jane coming in. And we get a lot of that. We get a lot of sort of comedy of them just missing each other by a hair. Sarah Jane goes and sees Sarah Jane as Androvax, of course. Androvax is Sarah Jane. Goes and sees Mr. York from the start. That's his name, the American guy. I don't think he's actually American. I looked him up. I think he said he's from Liverpool, and he played Van Helsing in Young Dracula, I think. So if you ever saw that, that's the guy. So goes and sees Mr. York from the start. Pulls out the sonic lipstick and zaps the communication system so that he can't call security. And says that the nanobots are going to build something very special. The gang run into the attic. We get another "Mr. Smith, I need you." And this time he opens up with alarms blaring. And he says, "Get out of the house now. Sarah Jane has initiated self-destruct on activation. I will explode in 60 seconds, and the explosion will destroy all of Bannerman Road, so you must run now." Credits. That's part one. Overall, I think things here have been a bit coincidental. I think it's very coincidental that on the day that Sarah Jane goes to Genetic Systems, it ends up being a major, like a major plot point where Androvax comes back there. But I don't think it's bad, because obviously Androvax has then got that out of her mind, so it all fits. It's very efficient, perhaps slightly too efficient, but it fits with the show, and the show's a little bit like that anyway, and I'm quite enjoying it. So yeah, I'm quite fond of this part one. On to part two. Mrs. Smith's screen just starts scrambling. We see a load of stuff pop up on the screen, like a ticket for Spellman's, sort of just like a scan of a Slovene, and Luke says that Mr. Smith's purpose is to protect the Earth. Sarah Jane's order to detonate endangers the Earth, therefore he shouldn't detonate. And he sort of logically considers this and goes, "Okay, that makes sense," and the counter stops. Obviously, with how many seconds to go? With 1 second to go, he's managed to talk a bomb out of going off. Go on, Luke. And Mr. Smith is now able to tell them where Sarah Jane is. I like Luke taking more of this leading role. We're still lacking a bit with Rani, unfortunately. I don't think we are going to see Rani come into her own in this episode, but maybe next episode, eh? Hint, hint. Mr. Smith says that the US military was able to re-engineer a spaceship from the crash at Roswell. Obviously, the whole thing with the Roswell and the grey aliens and all that stuff. And so Androvax, as Sarah Jane came in, had him acquire schematics from the Dreamland base, Area 51, and then we get a little cut to Androvex plugging the schematics in and forcing Mr. York to enter the codes to awaken the nanobots. Luke says that the nanobots are normally kept cold and dormant, and so they need to be woken up. Interestingly, the animated Doctor Who episode Dreamland is about this ship, and it was a month away from airing at that point. So I think Martha's episodes were 2007. Was Martha in that? No, Martha was in the other one. Was it? There was 2 animated things that they did. They look a bit janky, but I remember watching them and quite enjoying them. But that's Doctor Who stuff. But yeah, they sort of teased this one that was coming in a month because they talk about the ship that is part of that story. So that's quite neat. Androvac Sarah Jane has now programmed the nanobots to build the ship and also to multiply rapidly. And they're just going to take apart the Earth. They're going to dismantle the Earth to cover his tracks once he's left. And also because he's quite fond of, global destruction. He's already done it 12 times. Because he's evil, you see. But yeah, that's sort of what the nanobots do. They just take things apart down to an atomic level and then reassemble it. And that's just Earth technology. That's not alien technology. Just at this point in the Earth's history, in Sarah Jane Adventures, in the broader Doctor Who universe, Earth is capable of creating these nanobots that can just strip things down and reassemble them on a atomic level. That's just a thing. It's part of the story. Okay, that's got bizarre implications, but sure. So all the nanobots spill out of the machine as a weird black swarm. Obviously, nanobots taking over the Earth, it's hogwash. And then the nanobots are going to take over the Earth. Elizabeth is really giving it the beans with gravelly alien, Androvac's voice. TV Trope said that she suggested playing an evil version of herself. And so she's got to do that. I'm glad she's having fun with this. Geeta and Haresh are just sort of left in a side room as now all the nanobots are coming out. The building goes into lockdown and, alarms start going off. So the security guy goes to deal with that. Haresh tries to pick the lock. Geeta just ends up finding some keys in a drawer. The security guy wasn't that vigilant. And so they managed to escape. The gang pulls up at Genetic Systems. Sarah Jane as Androvax as Sarah Jane. Whenever I say Sarah Jane or Androvax, they are the same entity at this point. Sees them on CCTV, and they see the nanobots now swarming over the big bronze structure that was on top of the building to strip it down and repurpose it into the spaceship. How lucky that was there, eh? It's Androvax suggests that maybe they escaped Mr. Smith blowing up because there is actually something to Luke after all, because Sarah Jane is obviously very fond of Luke and he's all in her memories and sees how fond she is, and he goes, okay, maybe there is something to this Luke after all. He looks at his face in a reflection, sees Sarah Jane obviously, and the reflection speaks back and is saying, yes, Luke is amazing, he's going to stop you, basically singing Luke's praises, which is yet another reflection thing in this show. I don't know if that's a Phil Ford thing or maybe even a Joss Agnew thing, but it's becoming quite a theme of this show that you will see something in a reflection who is able to speak to you. Androvax gets angry, so zaps the glass with the sonic lipstick and shatters it, so can't see the reflection anymore, and Sarah Jane, just acting essentially as his conscience, can't speak to him. We've got 10 minutes till the Judoon backup arrives. The Judoon is once again a stickler for the rules, so forces Rani to pay and display the parking ticket, because she's the only one who's got money on her. Oh, Judoon, what are they like, eh? A little bit of comedy. And Tybo was just about to shoot his way into the building when Mr. York hits a button and ends the lockdown, because he's also seen that the gang is coming as backup on the CCTV. So Androvax Sarah Jane does the old unconsciousness trick on him. There's essentially punishment, saying, you're not useful to me anymore. Go to sleep. The security in the building spot Tybo and the gang now that they've come in. And Tybo aims his gun at them, and much like the police, they just flee. They go, there was nothing about aliens in the contract. We're out of here. Luke keeps referring to genetic systems as genetech. I don't know if it's just the way he's pronouncing genetic rather than as genetech, or if that was in an earlier draft and they've kept that and had to reshoot something or what. But it seems a bit like a continuity. I don't know. Again, the focus on genetic and genetic. There's nothing genetic about it. It's all robots. But I don't know what that's about. They actually spot Geeta and Haresh there, and then have some fun and games trying to keep everybody out of sight, especially Tybo, who's just, rhino something around. Geeta and Haresh continue looking for a way out when 4 Judoon backup teleport in with quite a lightning zappy effect. I think that's nicked from Doctor Who, of course. It makes sense. Looks quite good because they do a practical thing. If you see it off screen, you just see the lights flashing, and then it actually cuts to them, and they have the effect. And I like it. I like when VFX, play a part in, like, have an effect on the real world. It's like when that Bane was crawling up the stairs and it actually knocked the light and the light moved, or it knocked a painting off the wall or something. I like that. I like when they can combine it into the real world. So, as Judoon come in, scan and catalogue Haresh, assimilate the language, of course, consider him unimportant. He says, well, I demand to know what you're doing on this planet, actually. Aliens come in here. Geeta says, hey, maybe we shouldn't antagonize them. And the Judoon say that the female of the species is obviously more intelligent, because if you obstruct us, that carries the penalty of disintegration. You don't want to be disintegrated, do you? So how about you let us do our job? I have no idea how the show is going to explain this alien encounter away. It's literally an alien has come up to them and interacted with them. So we'll see what happens. Maybe they won't. Maybe it'll be like with Chrissy and the Grasky, and they never bring it up again. Who knows? Well, I know, but I'll tell you when we get there. There's another reflection, and there's more of Sarah Jane acting as Androvax's conscience. And Androvax essentially says, shut up or I'll harm the gang. So, stop trying to get me to not do this. I am going to destroy the world. Thank you very much. Tybo refuses to enter a door that says, unauthorized access forbidden. And Luke says, well, hey, look, how come you don't want to go through this door and yet you've come to Earth? Because according to the Shadow Proclamation, you're not meant to be on Earth. Thank you very much. And Tybo says, well, it's an accident. So then Clyde opens the door and goes, whoops, that was an accident. And they just all proceed. There's the backup contact Tybo, and we get sort of, a conversation in their own language. The Judoon language is sort of very bo show fo ro. It's quite iconic. But the gang say that we better find Sarah Jane quick, because if the backup come and capture Androvax, they aren't going to care about the human host. They're just going to take Sarah Jane. They're going to go, okay, we've captured Sarah Jane, therefore we have captured Androvax. Take them away, boys, So they trick Tybo into entering an electro-dampening chamber, which I guess is just like a Faraday cage, that is in this lab, and they lock him in. So that disables his communications, so he can't assist the backup. And he's angrily stomping about in there, but he can't escape. They then find Androvax Sarah Jane, who is doing such a bad job at playing normal Sarah Jane that I think he's just taunting them and isn't serious. Because he suggests Luke come and give, you want to give your mum a hug, and it's just very obvious that she is possessed. So the gang just kind of stand there a bit dumbfounded. We see Geeta, dragging Haresh around, trying to find the security guard that took her phone. Because, what if he gets disintegrated, and then my phone is destroyed, and it's got all my contacts in there. So, that's obviously priority right now. It's a bit of comedy. And the gang try hey, Sarah Jane, we know you're in there kind of speech on Androvax Sarah Jane. It appears to work. There's the moment of where it looks like Sarah Jane comes back to herself. Elizabeth Sladen plays that very, very well, going from I am a villain to I am back to normal Sarah Jane. Brilliant bit of acting there. But it's all a ruse. And then Androvax does the unconsciousness trick on Luke as well. And then uses the sonic lipstick to command some nanobots to strip Clyde and Rani apart. Because, you can strip a planet apart and just strip humans apart as well. That seems like an absolutely horrible way to go. But I like that he's keeping Luke, because we know that he's noticed how clever he is from reading Sarah Jane's thoughts, as was established before. So I don't need Clyde and Rani, strip them down, but Luke is smart, so I'm going to keep him for, he could be of use to me. So Clyde and Rani run as fast as possible from this nanobot swarm that is coming after them. It looks quite good as it crawls over the walls, but it's a bit blurry in other instances, so it's not the best looking thing, but it's not the worst looking thing. They try running one way, they spot the Judoon back up, they turn around, they run the other. So Luke has previously said that the nanobots need to be kept cold and dormant because when they're active they generate a lot of heat. I'm not sure if that checks out. But that's something that you need to bear in mind. Luke gets reawoken and taken to this huge bronze ship that is now sitting atop the building. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty cool. Quite like that. Less impressive on the inside when it's just quite a large blank area that's just decked out in bronze, shiny and padded bits. It's quite barren, and then it's just got some shiny bits around the outside. But hey, it serves the purpose. The nanobots are starting to break down the door that is between them and Clyde and Rani, because Clyde and Rani have run into the side and shut the door, but it's not going to hold them off for long. Clyde is just sort of panicking, saying, "Oh, I don't know what to do," and Rani says, "Yeah, I get it. You're the cool one, but being cool isn't helpful right now." And he goes, "Au contraire." He doesn't say "au contraire," but being cool is actually going to help us a lot right now. And they blast the nanobots with fire extinguishers as they break through the door. The door being broken down looks quite good. It goes kind of all bubbly and weird, and it's quite a neat effect as the nanobots burst through. And yeah, they blast them all with the fire extinguisher. It cools them down, sends them dormant again, so they can get past them. The Judoon backup have now found Tybo, and they free him after having a conversation in their own language about the no unauthorized access signs. It's not subtitled or anything, so you just sort of get the gist of it from like what they're pointing at. It's quite good. Luke says that Androvex, hey, you've got the ship now, so how about you just leave? You let Sarah Jane go. You don't need Sarah Jane. You've got your ship. I ain't gonna stop you. Leave this planet. Thank you very much. And Androvex says, "Hey, look, Sarah Jane. I've been in her thoughts. I've seen all the aliens she's stopped. She's known for meddling, and so if I let her go, that's giving her a chance of stopping me. So, not gonna do that." And Luke says, "Well, why are you even destroying worlds? Why do this? What do you get out of this?" And because it's all shiny in here, there's yet another reflection, and sort of Androvex sees the reflection, and it gives Sarah Jane a chance to break through for a second and reveal that Androvex's own world was destroyed before it snaps back to being Androvex. And so Androvex says, "Hey, look, I left my planet to go traveling for however long. When I returned, our sun was dead, planet was frozen, all my people were frozen. I'm the last of my kind, and we figure that has turned him bitter and cold and destructive." So Luke says, "Oh, so you're jealous that other people get to live, so that's why you go around destroying planets." And then Androvex hits him with the nihilism of the only truth of the universe is destruction, which is kind of emo for this show. I now would like to blame Androvex for my existential crisis. Thanks, Androvex. We see the nanobots are swarming all over the building now, by the way. Ronnie and Clyde run into the Judoon, and Turbo says, "You're convicted of multiple offences." Goes to execute them, shoot them. The whole building shakes because it's being dismantled now because the nanobots are swarming all over it. And so Ronnie and Clyde, they take the chaos to flee. The blaster bolt obviously narrowly misses them as they go through a doorway. And Gita and Haresh spot the Judoon marching about, but they miss the kids because it's a comedy of them missing each other by split seconds. The building falling apart, they just shake the camera around a lot. So that's how they're showcasing that right now. Clyde and Rani actually make their way up to the ship. Luke lets them in because he knows where the door controls are because Mr. Smith showed him the schematics earlier. He says, "I also know where the ionic fusion bar is for the engines," removes it, says, "Hey, Androvex, I'll give it to you and I will let you go if you let Sarah Jane go and you disable the nanoforms." We see on the ship's CCTV, or whatever space CCTV is, that the Judoon are coming, so you better decide quick. So Andrew Vex lets Sarah Jane go, and we see, the lovely prosthetic green design again, which they should have used more of because it looks spot on. I love it so much. Um, but then the Judoon storm the ship and capture him, and are about to take him away for execution. And Luke says, "Hey, Judoon, how about no? Stop, please. He hasn't disabled the nanoforms yet. They're going to tear the Earth apart. So how about before you do that, can you let him do that, please?" Um, and the whole ship starts shaking because the building underneath is collapsing. Maybe you shouldn't have built the ship directly on top of the building that you're going to destroy. Is like that's going to be the first thing that gets destroyed. In when you want to destroy the entire Earth, the first thing you're going to destroy is the building directly underneath where you put your ship. That seems like a bad idea. But the Judoon won't give Andrew Max up. So as a last-ditch attempt, Luke tries to access the Genetech computers through the ship's computer and shut them down, because he's a big, brainy, clever boy who can do that. A little bit Deus Ex Machina, but sure. There's a little speech about him saying that destruction is just part of the universe, and the universe is really about survival and evolution, which doesn't quite hit, because Andrew X's people didn't really get a chance to survive or evolve. So, it's easy for you to say, Luke, but Geeta and Haresh cling to each other for dear life in this building as debris starts raining down them. Sarah Jane wakes up, and Andrew X is just sort of standing there sniggering, saying that it's too late to do anything now. But it's not too late, actually. That's just a big lie, because Luke manages to shut the nanobots down. They all fall off the building in a big black mass. I bet somebody was very proud of animating that. And Andrew X says, well, it may not be me, but somebody will destroy you, Sarah Jane Smith. And the Judoon haul him away. Tybo says to Clyde and Rani, I was going to execute you earlier for obstructing me, but given the circumstances, your sentences are being commuted, so all I'm going to do is revoke your interstellar travelling rights, and you will henceforth be confined to Earth. I wonder if that will ever come up again, hint, hint. And they say that this spacecraft will be confiscated by the Judoon. Geeta and Haresh actually spot the Judoon escorting Andrew X away, and they are shocked at witnessing yet another alien. I've put in parentheses here in my notes. He looks so cool. Look him up. Look up Andrew X the Annihilator. He looks really cool. Tybo just walks by them and says, "There's nothing to see here. Move along." And they go, "Oh, Rani will never believe a word of this." Mr. York wakes up in time to stumble out of the building and see the ship take off from the roof as the Judoon confiscate it and fly it away. And then back outside 13 Bannerman Road, Sarah Jane sums up the moral of the story that, I feel quite sorry for Andrew Vex that he can't see that destruction isn't the end game of the universe. It's just sort of part of the cycle of life. And, I wonder if Andrew Vex, who they say is going to be executed, but we don't see him being executed, so there's a bit of ambiguity about it. I wonder if he will ever turn up again, hinted. And Geeta and Haresh pull up, in the van. Geeta runs over to frantically tell them about the aliens that she's seen, and they all play along like they're shocked and they don't quite believe it. But Haresh is sort of a lot more wistful. He says, "Oh, well, I knew nobody would ever believe us." And that's the end. That is the end of the second part. So that was a pretty solid episode. I wouldn't say it's the best one. I wouldn't say it's up there with the Trickster episode or anything. Pretty standard one. But I definitely think the character design was possibly a highlight over the story. But the story was solid. The end wasn't bad. Phil Ford is not known for his excellent endings. The end of this one wasn't bad. It was nice and fun. Sarah Jane got to play a bit of a different character. You got to see Elizabeth Sladen doing something a bit different. So I think it was a good opening to a new series. And I will see you next time for the next one, which involves a red alien-looking lady. And Rani is apparently really old. So we'll see what's up with that. Bye.